for thy coming, and when thou comest, to bathe thy feet with my tears. My voice was made to sing thy glory. My feet were made to seek thy temples everywhere. My eyes were made a chalice to hold thy burning love and the wisdom falling from thy nature's hands. My ears were made to catch the music of thy footsteps echoing through the halls of space, and to hear thy divine melodies flowing through all heart tracks of devotion. My lips were made to breathe forth thy praises and thine intoxicating inspirations. My love was made to throw incandescent searchlight flames to find thee hidden in the forest of my desires. My heart was made to respond to thy call alone. My soul was made to be the channel through which thy love might flow uninterruptedly into all thirsty souls. So my soul was made for thy love to flow uninterruptedly. That's really the definition of divine love, for us to attune ourselves so perfectly to God's love that we become an instrument and a vehicle ourselves of that beautiful love. And that's what we're talking about in today's reading, essentially, is divine love and attuning ourselves so perfectly that we too become that. And I found a quote from Yogananda I'd like to read to start. God is love, and love is the panacea for human suffering. There is nothing greater than love. God's quality of attraction and unity that is manifested in the soul of every being. This love, when expressed under all circumstances in family, social, and national life, expands to embrace the whole world. Such universal love is the pure love of God. And that's what we're talking about, is a love so great that it moves beyond time and space, beyond borders and thoughts of limitations and nationalities and that type of thing. And we're reminded in today's reading that that's where true transformation comes from, when we ourselves tap into that stream of unconditional divine love. And even in every situation, in spite of persecution and hate and spite, that we stay centered in God. Something really interesting happened this week, or maybe it was last week. Two very high-profile media personalities were both fired or let go from their job on the same day. And they were both extremely divisive in different ways. One was a conservative commentator, one was a liberal commentator. And they had different types of personalities and different types of ways that they delivered their message, but they were both polarizing, to others. And it made me start to think and wonder if the collective consciousness in America was finally reaching a tipping point where people had had enough of this type of angry, vitriolic commentary that we hear every day. The last several years has been really difficult in this country. There's just so much hate and anger. And even if we ourselves don't tune into that and we don't subscribe to that or listen to that type of media, it still affects our hearts, because everybody knows that thoughts are energy and words are even more powerful manifestations of that energy. And, as a culture, I think, we're into a Para Yuga, which is an ascending yuga of transformation and human elevation of consciousness. And as time goes on, even in our lifetime, hopefully, I think it'll start to dawn on people that this is really destructive to ourselves, as a community, individually and nationally, for all of us. So there's a little bit of hope there that maybe our own good peace and harmony, there's many people in the country that are praying every day for peace and love, unconditional love, what we're talking about in today's reading. And those thoughts have a vibration too. And maybe we've reached the point where the vibration of love and peace and the desire for that is finally shining light in the dark areas of the world. And I think, again, as we go deeper into into a Dwapara Yuga, there'll come a point where generations from now, they'll look back at this time and think, how could we have allowed people to spew such hate on the radio and on television for everybody to receive in their hearts? You know, because again, these thought waves are in the ether, and even when we try to protect ourselves, they still come and they hurt us. And you know, sometimes you might wake up in the morning and just feel sad and you're not really sure why, and it's because culturally we're being bombarded with just, you know, a lot of negativity. When you think about throwing a pebble into a still body of water, those little concentric circles start to radiate out until they reach the shore. And it's the same exact thing with our thoughts, with our words, the way that we feel. And that's the divine law, that anything that we put out there as a culture or as an individual, it spreads out and it affects everyone equally. And, you know, on a personal level, every time we think an unkind thought about someone or say something negative about someone, not only are we hurting them, we're hurting their soul, but we're hurting ourselves ultimately. You know, we're hurting our own hearts. And as devotees, we're always supposed to be expanding and purifying our hearts so that we can receive more of that divine love and that divine vibration. Today's reading talks about loving your enemies. And most of us don't have actual enemies at this point in our life, but we all have ex-partners and maybe difficult co-workers or family members. And, you know, when we find ourselves being triggered by these difficult relationships, the first thing that we need to do is look inside of ourselves, because every relationship, every person, every experience is simply a mirror that God sends us to look at ourselves and to really dig deep and understand, why are we reacting to that situation or that person? And that's what we're talking about in today's reading too, is everything that God sends to us is an opportunity for us to purify ourselves, for us to grow in our own understanding. And, you know, I remember when I was probably the whole decade between 20 and 30, every time I was judgmental about another person or a situation or something that was going on, that exact thing came to me within a year or two. And I had to experience that exact same thing that I was judging other people about. And I had to move through it. And when we go through those experiences of the things that we're judgmental about, when we come through them, we become compassionate. We understand what it's like to be in that situation or to be that person that perhaps we judged previously. And that's how our heart grows. You know, we become more loving and kind and understanding. Yesterday in our Raja Yoga course, we're 8 weeks into our 10-week class, and it's been a really wonderful, dynamic class. We have about 20 people. Many of them are new to these teachings. And yesterday we talked about the astral spine and the chakras. And we spent a lot of time on the Anahata chakra, which is the heart chakra. And in Sanskrit, Anahata, or I should say in English, Anahata means unstuck. The unstuck heart is what we're trying to attain or achieve in this lifetime. And a heart that is unstuck means a heart that has been purified by our love for God and God's love for us. And in that purification process of us expressing devotion to God, those little knots that tie those samskaras together in the vrittis, they start to come undone, and we start to purify ourselves. And then we can receive more of God's love and more of God's divine vibration. And in turn, we can offer that out to other people. And again, that's what today's reading is all about, is having the capacity to send love to the people that don't love us back. You know, again, I don't think we really have enemies, but to send love out to the people that really need love, and to be able to recognize that God is in them as well. Even if they're behaving badly, that God underneath is always there, that it's part of all of us. And every time that we think a kind, generous, compassionate, loving thought, there's a little ray, according to Swami Kriyananda, there's a little ray of Kundalini that rises up and touches our heart. And again, that's part of the purification process that we go through. And on the other side of that, every time we have a negative or hateful thought or word about someone, the energy of our heart descends down the spine and coils more deeply into the Kundalini. And that locks us more into ego consciousness. So it does just the opposite of what we're trying to do. We're trying to always blossom in our soul nature. And when we're unkind or negative to someone, or about a situation, again, that just takes that energy and locks it deeper and deeper into that tight coil of Kundalini at the base of our spine. And we're really trying to open that energy up. That's the whole spiritual process. That's why working on the heart chakra is so important. And we talked about that at length yesterday, that the heart is our bridge. It's the bridge between the upper three energy centers that we focus on in this path and the lower three energy centers, which are really just about survival. And we talked a lot about how to cultivate an unstuck heart. And we talked a lot about chanting. So some of the newer people, they were very curious about the repetition of the chants and how simple the words were. They found that to be kind of curious compared to the type of music that we listen to in popular culture. And, we were just having that conversation that when we chant, Yogananda said, chanting is half the battle. What happens when we chant, the words themselves start to lose the meaning. It's the essence of the devotion for God that starts to open up our heart center. And we actually have a vibration in the heart of openness and divine love. And that's the power of the chanting. And the longer we chant, the deeper and deeper we go into that vibration. Duti's going to be here on the 20th, the weekend of the 20th, doing a beautiful weekend of devotional music and chanting. So I encourage everybody to come to that. Also, we have the Hong Sa technique, which is so powerful. Every time we say Hong Sa, every time we bring the energy up to the spiritual eye, we're bringing that energy through the heart and we're opening the heart and our capacity to love more deeply. And also japa practice. Yogananda suggested that we repeat Om God, Om Christ, Om Guru. That was his recommendation to us. And when we get into the process of practicing japa, it becomes lined up with the beating of our heart. We start to not think about it intellectually. And when we do it every day, sometimes we find that we're doing it when we don't even realize it. Sometimes we wake up in the morning and it's already going, or sometimes we're in the middle of some busy work and we realize that behind that we're basically, it's a form of devotion. We're chanting God's name, which is so powerful, another way to open the heart. When I was younger, again, in my 20s, I had a very difficult experience. My father was dying of cancer, and I had a breakup. And anyway, I felt so angry at the time because my father was a very kind and loving and gentle soul, and he really, truly loved God. And for him to be dying, it was just hard for me to accept. And I felt very angry and sad, of course. And one particular day, I was talking to God, and I just said, I'm just having such a hard time with this. I want to pray, but I don't know what to say. And as clear as day, I heard a voice say, just say, I love you. And it was startling in its clarity and simplicity. And I just took that and started to use that every day. Just, I love you, God. I love you. I love you. And it helped me get through a very, very difficult time in my life. And one day, after 3 or 4 weeks, I was coming out of the subway in New York City, and I felt God love me back. I felt my whole heart open to this incredible vibration of divine love. And I was laughing and crying at the same time. And it was just a joy of pure love. And after that point, it helped me see the situation in a different way. And it helped me realize that the most difficult things we go through in life, again, as in today's reading, are God's way of teaching us to transform ourselves, to transform from ego consciousness into this greater consciousness of God's light and love, and that everything that happens to us and to the ones we love, it's all by design. It's part of our great karmic manifestation of living in the human body. At that time, I didn't understand that, but it really helped me to kind of propel my way of thinking in a different way. And that's what God does for all of us. The more that we love God, just by saying, I love you, God, and offering our devotion, there's this powerful magnetic force of God's love that is attracted back to us. And that's what happened to me that day. My own repeating the word, I love you, I love you, I love you, created this incredible magnetic force that went out into the ether, and it drew that love right back to me. And that's how we transform ourselves. That's how we love our enemies. We stop seeing people as enemies or even adversaries, because we just see them as another expression of God's love, just a different way of God expressing through humanity. The peace and harmony prayer is a gift that Yogananda gave us. it's almost like alchemy. It's like taking the lead of conflict and anger and disharmony and turning it into the gold of compassion, love, and goodwill. So if you find yourself in a situation where it's hard to see God in another person, then really take this prayer into your heart and practice it. You visualize the person that you perhaps are in conflict with, surrounded in Divine Mother's light, and you repeat 10 times, Lord, fill, you name the person, with peace and harmony, peace and harmony. And then at the end, you say it for yourself 3 times, Lord, fill me with peace and harmony. And it's such a powerful way to change, again, the ether. You know, we talked about that whenever there's that negative energy going out into the world, it affects those that we're thinking of, it affects everyone. But by turning it around and offering peace and love and harmony, we're doing just the opposite. We're turning the tables, we're bringing light into darkness. And, you know, the power of consciously sending the ripple of peace through the ether can change the world. You know, and that's where we are right now in history, where we are the ones that chose to incarnate now at a time when we can actually affect change in the world, in this age of energy and love, through our own love for each other, through our own compassion, our own ability to expand our love to everyone, not just the ones that we love the most, that we can actually affect the planet at this time. And that's basically what it means to be perfect in God's eyes, is to choose love in every situation. So something to think about this week as you're out and about. If there's anything that kind of makes you feel constricted or contractive in the heart, just take a moment and breathe into the heart center, the Anahata chakra. Ask God to help you find yourself being unstuck, you know, with negativity and fear and all of the negative qualities of the heart, and instead call in the light of God and offer that love to everyone. Peace, amen.